For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Sashnee Moodley. The South African Institute of International Affairs senior researcher Neissan Besharati joins me to discuss Saiia's latest case study, South Africa and the DRC, evaluating a South-South partnership for peace, governance and development. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me, Sashnee.
Tell us about the case study and the reason behind it.
Sure. Saiia has been working on emerging powers in Africa for a long time and looking at their engagement with different African countries on aid, trade, investment. So this has been part of an ongoing stream of work that Saiia has been doing for many years. But this particular case study is connected to a research project which we are conducting with our partners at New York University on the peace-building approach and role of emerging powers in Africa in fragile states. So we conducted a case study on Turkey's role in Somalia as well as South Africa in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So within that we wanted to see what was the specific approach or paradigm of these emerging powers, how it's different than that of traditional donors, and if it is in any way more effective in their approach to building peace, states, governance and development generally.
Evidence emerging from the research suggests that the DRC is the biggest recipient of South Africa's developmental assistance. Can you tell us why and explain what the assistance consists of? Sure.
There has been a very long-standing relationship between South Africa and the DRC that goes back many years. This is, I think, one of the driving forces is that DRC is quite central country in Africa. It's literally at the heart of Africa, and what happens in the DRC affects the whole region and the whole continent. So it is really for the sake of the peace, stability and prosperity of the region, it's important that the DRC is also peaceful and stable and prosperous. So this has informed much of South Africa's engagements from the beginning. South Africa was very involved even from the time of President Mandela, where he lobbied the rest of the SADC community to include DRC as part of the community. And later also President Mbeki played a big role in the DRC was almost one of his pet projects as part of his African Renaissance, to really ensure that the region and the country is peaceful. So South Africa played a big role in hosting the peace talks of bringing into Sun City and then later to Pretoria all the different parties and conflicting factions of the DRC to discuss peace and negotiate an agreement that would take to the first election and the transitional government. So South Africa has been a big part in building that peace and that new state of the DRC that today exists. So to just give you an overview very quickly of some of the many interventions, after the political negotiations, South Africa ensured gave a lot of support to the peacekeeping work as part of the UN mandate MONUSCO, but also as part of the SADC Force Intervention Brigade fighting rebel groups at the eastern borders. It has played a huge role in the last two elections, in 2006 and 2011, spending a lot of South African money and resources to assist the Congolese government to host successful elections, printing the ballots in South Africa, taking the ballots to all the remote parts of the country using South African helicopters and planes. So a massive investment to ensure that the country would have peaceful, fair elections. So South Africa has been very invested all these years. It also has done a lot of state-building work. It has all the South African departments, from the National School of Government to the Department of Public Service to Home Affairs to Department of Foreign Affairs. They all have supported their Congolese counterparts, trained them, helped them in drafting laws, provided technical assistance. So it has really been the whole of government of South Africa trying to support its fellow government in the DRC to build the institutions. And in recent times, the relationship has also gone a lot looking at also the economic dimension. So the Department of Trade and Industry and some of the development finance institutions like the BSA and IDC have been involved in the DRC, trying to encourage South African investment there, trade relations, building different sectors from agriculture to telecommunications to transport and infrastructure. And a big part of South Africa's relationship now in the DRC is strategically connected to the Grand Inga Dam project, which has the potential of providing electricity to not only the DRC but also to the region and to South Africa, which suffers from deficit. So a lot of talks and discussions are currently undergoing between South Africa and DRC around the Grand Inga project, but still yet to materialize. So that just to give you an overview of the different manifold engagements of South Africa in the DRC.
What has South Africa gained from investments in the DRC?
Well, when people think about the investments that South Africa has made and all the aid it has provided, people always assume, oh, of course, South Africa is going to get, DRC has a lot of minerals, so South Africa probably has stakes in that. But actually, it's not been the case. The Chinese and the Indians and the other foreign donors have had much more role in recent years in the mining industry in the DRC. But there has been a lot of South African investment, including the biggest telecommunications provider, Vodacom, is in the DRC and is the biggest provider in the DRC. And obviously, there is a lot of trade between South Africa and the DRC, but it's mostly imports. Most of the products and services that the DRC uses is South African. So South Africa is the leading importer of goods to the DRC. So it definitely plays a role, but that is not really what motivates and drives the relationship. What drives is really that solidarity, that Ubuntu philosophy in the South African foreign policy, and really the pragmatism of the need for a stable Africa, a prosperous Africa. A good region is important. The famous saying of Mandela, we cannot be an island of prosperity in an ocean of poverty. So the importance to keep the DRC as such an important central country to Africa, stable, peaceful, functional, with a growing economy, this will bring indirect benefits to the region and to South Africa. So, yeah.
There is political instability in the DRC. Many want President Joseph Kabila to step down in December, as mandated by the Constitution. Has this affected or will it affect South Africa's assistance to the DRC?
Yes, as you know, as everybody knows, there is some major political turmoil at the moment in the DRC. And it is not clear what role South Africa wants to play, or it has not come out very clearly, its position with regards to supporting Kabila or not, with regards to his term now coming to an end. South Africa operates very differently than the international donor community. Because of its principles and the way it operates in South-South cooperation, it believes in non-interference in national affairs. It believes in respect of sovereignty. It doesn't do things that Western traditional donors do, like withhold aid or put conditionalities to aid or sanctions or even speak out against it, because it has certain allegiances within the African neighborhood and follows the Southern principles of equality, and so it would never overstep. So certainly it will not. I don't foresee the aid of South Africa to the DRC being affected by the politics, but nevertheless, South Africa does need to take a stance and a position, considering its own values, its own democratic principles, its own pluralism, and the fact that it played such a role to ensure that there was fair elections, that there was a pluralistic government of unity, like the same transition process that South Africa went to. So in this moment of crisis, South Africa needs to step up and say or do something that shows its leadership in the continent. That's my personal opinion.
Your paper concludes that South Africa does not have a coherent, coordinated, and unified approach to its development cooperation. Why so, and what are the consequences of this?
Well, the main reason is South Africa does not operate like the other donors. It doesn't have one central agency which does development aid. It doesn't have like a USAID or a DFID or like the other countries have, like a JICA. We have been talking for many years about a SADPA, South Africa Development Partnership Agency, but this has not materialized. So as a result, South Africa does engage in international cooperation, but it does it in a very decentralized way through different departments. So every single department, government agency, SOE in South Africa engages with the DRC and other countries through their own programs, their own activities, and their line of action. They have partnerships with their counterparts in Congo, but this is not necessarily coordinated at central level. So people arrive in Kinshasa or arrive in another country in Africa, and South Africans meet there and they don't even know what each other is doing. There is no system of coordination or agency that provides a coordinated approach. And this obviously has effect on the efficiency and effectiveness of South Africa's development cooperation because it's uncoordinated, but also on the fact of South Africa being able to play a more strategic role and more focused, and because it doesn't have an overarching international development cooperation policy, and which all the departments follow and are guided by. So South Africans and South African government doesn't have a full picture of everything that South Africa is doing because it's so fragmented. But at the same time, it also cannot use its own soft power and its own influence, because in reality it is a lot, but it is not aware of what it is, how much it is, and how it's done. So it cannot be used as a foreign policy tool to have leverage on its partners in the way that maybe other more strategic donors like the Asians or the Europeans engage in Africa.
And what is the aim of your paper?
So the aim of our paper, as well as our companion paper, let's say on Turkey and Somalia, is to basically raise more knowledge, more evidence on the role that these emerging powers like South Africa play in international development, in peace building. What is their particular approach, their paradigm? What are the specific aspects? How does that differ from that of traditional donors operating on the continent? And if ultimately it is more effective, the model that South Africa has to offer.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That was Saiia Senior Researcher Neissan Besharati discussing the Institute's latest case study.